remind members that this meeting will be recorded and ask that members to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with the recordings. Tablet devices should be switched to mute, which is FM and F8. Can I remind members to declare their interest as appropriate throughout the meeting? And can I advise members that we will suspend the meeting at 2 p.m. for Minister's question time. Declare the meeting open to the public. Agenda item number 1 then is apologies. Do we have any apologies? Robin Swan's chairing the chairperson's liaison at the present time. So. Any other apologies? No? Okay. Agenda item 2, chairperson's business. I have nothing to report there. Agenda item number 3 is minutes of the meeting, 10th of June. Can I refer members to the draft minutes of the meetings on the 10th of June 2014 at pages 5 to 15? Are members content with the draft minutes as accurate? If so, I will sign. Members agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. One, yeah. Thanks, Elaine. Okay, agenda item number 4, there's matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at page 18, 21? If I can refer members to the correspondence at page 18 from the Minister in response to a request from the committee to have a joint meeting with the Northern Ireland Livestock Auctioneers Association. The Minister advises that she has already planned to meet with the Auctioneers Association, but it is also content to meet with them and the committee. Arrangements will be made by the committee office. Members should note that an email was received yesterday indicating that the only time the Minister was available was Tuesday the 1st of July at 3:15 to 4 p.m. Staff have checked the availability of the Livestock Association and we are having bother just getting a reply from them. We have an email away, but it just hasn't been responded to yet. So are members content that we suspend the committee meeting on the 1st of July for 45 minutes to meet? We'll meet outside of this room too, just so there's a natural break between committee and meeting. And we'll come back in again. Members agree?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. Are members content to action matters arising as suggested on the index sheet at page 17? Members agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. Agenda item number 5 then. Committee consideration of draft report, Reservoirs Bill. With regards to the amendments, members will recall that at last week's meeting, Rivers Agency officials presented amendments to clauses which we as a committee have already voted on. These amendments, which are around the risk designation process, are at pages 23 to 57. And members will have had time to reflect on the proposals made by Rivers Agency. The Hansard of the meeting last week, where this issue was discussed, is tabled papers. If members are content to accept the amendments, then the report which we will consider later will be amended to reflect this decision. If members are still not content with the amendments, then the report will reflect this also. Can I welcome David Porter and Kieran Brazier, as always, to the committee. David and Kieran are here specifically to provide clarification on clause 25(2)(k). However, should any members need further clarification on clauses 17 to 23, then they can address that also. The Hansard from the meeting on the 10th of June has been provided for members' information, and this is at pages
Pages 2
of your table papers. So without further ado, David, Kieran, do you want to just brief us on these amendments then?
Yeah, and it's, as you pointed out, it's just on 25(2)(k), and in essence the minimum standard that we have included in the bill for the supervising engineers' visits. And from your discussion last week, there was really 2 issues, Mr. Chair. One was that the clause includes a minimum standard but doesn't have a maximum. And then the second one is just whether the number of minimum visits is correct. So if you're content, I'm going to treat those 2 separately because they are 2 separate issues.
Yes.
The bill only indicates a minimum standard because it is absolutely impossible to determine what the maximum number of visits should be. So, for instance, if your reservoir is in very poor condition, if it's at the point of failure, what we don't want to do is set a maximum number of visits for an engineer, so that therefore in that emergency situation, you actually, the bill stops you actually getting a visit by a supervising engineer, because they are the competent person that stands alongside you and helps you manage that risk. So I would certainly encourage the committee not to be trying to put in a maximum. It won't actually help people. It's almost like, if I can use an analogy, trying to save money for the NHS by saying the maximum number of times you can visit your doctor is 6 per year. But if you're very sick, 6 per year isn't good enough. If you have a very sick reservoir, you shouldn't have a maximum number of inspection or visits by a supervising engineer. So hopefully that's provided some clarity on that. In terms of the numbers that we have included in this, the department has looked at this, and we are content that this is the right number in terms of the high consequence, that an inspection, or sorry, a visit each year is the right number, and for a medium consequence, once every other year is the right number. So we haven't provided you with an alternative clause or an amended clause. However, I have said on quite a number of occasions, I'm quite content if the committee feels that they want to push that out further. I'm quite content to make an amendment to that. However, I have said we need to be careful that what we're not doing is just satisfying our own needs here to actually be seen to be changing the legislation. We already have moved from 2 inspections or 2 visits a year for high risk, and once every 12 months for medium. And the reason that I'm imploring you on that one is because the exposure of public indemnity insurance by the engineer, what we don't want to do is to say, yes, we've managed to push it out to 1 in 5 or something like that, and actually nobody actually gets that on the ground. So that offer still remains. I'm quite content to make a change to this if you feel that it's absolutely necessary in order to help with the process of the bill. But I would really stress that I feel that these are right. And a very minor modification, if you felt that it was absolutely necessary, may well be possible, but I would be cautious about changing it significantly because of the professional indemnity issue and the service that a supervising engineer offers. They are the competence, they are the expert that stands beside the reservoir manager. And in that, there was also discussion about limiting this because this was an inspection. This is not an inspection. Inspection is what happens every 10 years. This is a visit by a competent person that is working alongside the reservoir manager to be able to make sure that their liability is being controlled in a reasonable way. That's the expertise, that's a partnership, that's the supervising engineer and the reservoir manager working together in order to provide assurance. It's not the one visit every 10 years of the inspecting engineer who just is doing the MOT. This is a working together. So that's all I really had to say on those 2 issues: the maximum number of visits, and also then the actual numbers that are presented in the bill.
Okay. Does any members want to comment at this stage before I come in? The members content? Just a minute. I'll let you in. Oliver, do you want to come in?
Just very quickly, I see where you're coming from on that there, David. So a high-risk reservoir, how many, can we put a specific time or something to aim at where it can be downgraded after the visits we have, inspections, say the once every 12 months visit?
Yeah. Well, again, I would really encourage you not to do that, and the reason being, what the inspecting engineer identifies are the obvious defects. That gets it knocked into shape, and then there's a process of keeping an eye on it forevermore, and that's what the annual visit by a supervising engineer does. You don't get to a point that, I can understand why you would limit the number of supervising engineers' visits until you got it into shape, but in essence that's the process anyway. We don't actually need to put that into legislation, but the routine, keeping an eye on the structure to be able to give assurance that your liability is being controlled and to give assurance to the people downstream, that routine visit is very, very important. And you don't get to a point where you can say, actually, I've seen that last year, I don't need to see it this year, because what you're doing by doing that very simple task of going in and visiting it every year, checking that the paperwork's been kept right, checking that there's been no significant change, that's what gives us the ability to give you the assurance that it's not at the point of failure. And a visit every year, and a visit is typically a half day where the supervising engineer will come along, particularly if they have a good working relationship with the reservoir manager. They understand the system that they have in place in terms of what the reservoir manager is checking, water levels, any significant change, and there's a dialogue going on about if anything has changed. That visit a year is very important, and you don't get to a point where you can actually say we can back off on that further.
Oliver,
Yes, I know. I'm happy with that there, but the only thing concerns me is that to do all that there to protect those downstream. I'm still a wee bit worried in case there's any building work or development goes on downstream. Then the onus of that development work could go on to the reservoir.
Yeah.
and I would put extra legislative consent on that, where that would be really, there should be, that's, a lot of that should go back onto the developer.
The developer, that's
and I would be
correct.
scared of the developer offloading that problem onto the reservoir owner. I think that there's a line there would have to be separated in the future.
We totally agree, and that's why in FLD 5 of the new PPS 15 it does set that out very clearly, that in the absence of being able, as part of your flood risk assessment, being able to give assurance that the reservoir is in good condition, well then there's going to be a requirement for works to be done on that, and they will be a condition of the planning application, and therefore the reservoir manager and the developer wants the plan application to go through, they have to talk, they have to come to an agreement so that those works can be carried out. So now what that relationship is, we don't intend to put into legislation, and we don't intend to put into planning policy, because that's a private matter. But the fact that it has to exist in order to get planning permission is the bit that's in FLD 5.
As long as the developer cannot force the reservoir owner to do that,
No, he can't. He can't.
while the development
No.
there'll be a little bit of work in there to get out to share costs or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, that's
That's right.
absolutely right.
Just to tease that out, because I take there's two issues here, of course, and it's the issue of high consequence, medium consequence, and change that affects, and then also the worry about over engineering, which is basically the whole ethos of the minimum maximum argument. Let's play that out. And I get the point with FLD 5, whereby developer comes to owns land, buys land for development, pursues a planning application, meets with the reservoir owner. They then come up with a scheme or a plan that actually channels or could channel some flood water, have a breach of a dam, and that's incorporated in the planning. How will that? What mechanism will see that through the other side that will content everyone that those measures are appropriate and will mean that reservoir remains as a medium consequence and not high?
Well, in the same way that whenever you have to do works to, for instance, the sight line, that becomes the condition of the planning application.
Yes, okay.
And in the absence of that being carried out, well then there's a planning and enforcement process, and you can have your views on how good, bad or indifferent that is, but that's the process that we have, so it will be conditioned on the plan application. Now, in some cases it may not be, so very minor things don't become conditions, but certainly if it's a significant reservoir and significant works are required, that we would be pushing very, very hard to make sure that was a condition on the planning application form or the approval.
You could get the position where you have a high consequence at the minute, a high consequence reservoir at the minute, and due to development work downstream, you could actually make that a medium. Because if you do get to the point where you're diverting water away from
you could,
the area that's already built by the fact you've developed land.
You can only do that with the amendments that we've suggested that you're about to go on to. The bill as it's written at the minute, you can't actually do that. But with the amendment that we've proposed, because you can actually move from a high consequence down to a medium consequence, and what we're proposing, and is going to move on to next, you could actually do that. So, and I would encourage people to do that from a technical point of view. Don't just accept your initial designation. It may well be worth looking to see what can I do in order to reduce my burden going forward, particularly at this early stage. It's very important that people, because we have the pause built into the bill now, that whenever they get their initial designation, whenever they get that first inspection and the grant aid assistance to do that, I would be including in the scope of works what else can I do in order to reduce the consequence of this going forward, because I want to minimise the burden of this right from day one.
Good point.
And certainly would be encouraging people to do that.
Yeah. But with regards to the minimum maximum amount of visits argument, it does stem from the fear of over-engineering and trying to implant some sort of safeguard into the legislation so that in practice people are protected to that degree. Now, I think the problem that I've had, and certainly the committee has had, is that the fact that we're not technical experts.
Yeah.
So it is very hard for us to, if we're not content, and there is an unease here with regards to the whole concept of over-engineering.
Yeah.
So whilst we have we're not content, I've struggled to see how I can amend this with no expertise at my disposal with regards to what I know. So that's probably where we're struggling and where we're grappling with this issue. And that's basically why I threw it in last week with regards to the maximum minimum argument.
And on that, we have accepted the argument about over-engineering. We have included within the clause not just the content, but the quality, or not just the quality, but the content as well of the report. We have accepted that the department has a role in managing the whole process of reservoir enforcement, and it's not just an administrative, that there is a technical expertise that we need to bring to this as well. And it's on that point that I'm telling you I have the expertise to judge on this, and I strongly recommend to the committee that this is right.
Okay, Oliver, you want to come in?
Just the last bit on that there, on development downstream, whatever, the owners of the what happens with the council? The council now getting the power of planning. Can a councillor be surcharged? Being an employer of the council who will then employ the engineer to do the actual works, it could come back to the councillors, could be surcharged with nothing in there to tell me they can't be. You know where I'm coming from?
I'm not sure what you mean by surcharged.
You see, if anything goes wrong, the reservoir manager will be an employee of the council.
Yeah.
He could argue whatever because he's employed by the council, and the council employers are the councillors who, if something goes wrong and proved that they were not diligent in what they're doing, can be surcharged. Yeah. Each councillor can be surcharged that there.
Well, I follow what you mean. There's a very simple answer to that, is if people follow what it says in this legislation, whenever it's on the statute books, that will give them protection. They are more vulnerable today because it's under common law, and under common law, in the event of a failure, if a civil case is taken, you go in front of the judge and the judge works out what the penalty is. Whenever this is brought in, the first piece of evidence that a council or any reservoir manager will present is, here's the legislation and here's the evidence that I'm compliant with it. I've done everything that could possibly be reasonably expected of me under the law in order to ensure reservoir safety. And that limits people's liability because they now have a defence in law that government required a certain standard, and we are accepting that there may well be reservoir failures even whenever this is in. This does not stop every failure. What it does is it puts in as many reasonable checks and balances as we can at a reasonable cost, with reasonable competence and a reasonable inspection regime in order to try and give assurance that the reservoir stock out there is okay. I can't tell you that at this minute in time. We don't know. But whenever this is in, that at least will answer that question, and that will protect the individual reservoir managers.
Okay. Roman Swan.
Sorry, Just to get through the consequences and directing water away, how much, I'm trying to get through and remember the volumes of the existing reservoirs that we have. How much water do you have to direct away?
Yeah, well, what we're going to do is we'll be developing a methodology to determine what the difference is between a medium and a high. And so we will be able to give a depth and velocity because, as I've said, deep water, fast flowing, that's what kills people. So there will be a threshold below which we are comfortable enough, and therefore those reservoirs will fall into medium consequence. So it will be relatively straightforward for an engineer then to model that reservoir on the computer, to work out what physical works that they need to do in order to get the flow in terms of velocity and the speed of the water and the depth of the water below that threshold. And whenever it's below that threshold, that would be the evidence that we would need to say that's moving either from a medium or from a high to a medium. Now, the easiest way of doing it is to remove that water altogether. So, for instance, a house sitting on the edge of a riverbank, and that's where the water is going to run down through. If you reposition that riverbank so that house can't get wet, that's the easy way. But you don't necessarily have to go as far as that, because we will be able to have a threshold whereby we are comfortable that no death is likely.
And in that modelling, understanding flows and volumes, in that modelling, will that be on the complete volume of the reservoir or on the volume that classifies it as a man-made reservoir? You know, is it going to be the full calculation or just that additional?
It's only the escapable volume. So if you have a natural lake, which you then raise the water level, it's only the difference between the natural lake to that raised level. And again, we will define that in guidance to reservoir managers, so it's absolutely crystal clear that it's only the escapable volume of water that we're concerned about, because whenever the man-made structure fails, it's only the bit that's held back by that wall that can actually escape. You know, water can't jump out of a natural depression in the ground.
In your calculations for them flow and velocity, I take it that considers where in position the house or the structure is.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, at this moment in time, the reservoir inundation maps that I've shown you are just a very cursory, basic, you know, they're fairly fundamental or basic assumptions made that just to start the ball rolling. We will be producing a much more detailed model for each of the reservoirs, and again, that's something that we're happy enough to program that in and have funding to do that, and that's something that reservoir managers will be able to use, or their consultants, if they wanted to take that information and then, if they are high consequence, to actually model to see what physical works can we actually do to change the consequence here.
You're going to do that modelling for all reservoirs?
Yes.
Do you have access to all reservoirs to enable that modelling to be accurate?
Well, you don't actually need physical access at this moment in time.
Kieran said yes, David, you said you don't need access.
Well, we know where all the reservoirs are.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you don't need, what we need, the main thing that's actually limiting our model is actually the shape of the ground, the topography. And so what we've used is a very coarse model at this moment in time. What we'll get is what's called LiDAR, so that'll be flowing, and we will get a much more detailed ground model, and that's what actually will make the significant change.
Do you need access to be able to do that accurately?
No, well, you can gain LiDAR without getting access, because it's a flow-on survey. But now, what could help matters greatly is if you think that the impoundment is the wrong size in the model, you obviously then need to go in and measure it. So if access was given through this process, well, then that would help even further refine the model that we have.
Let me get this clear. So all that work that you're doing with regards to velocity, density, all of that work,
That velocity, yeah.
that can't be done surely by the audit report, the initial audit report.
No, that's something that we're doing in parallel. We already have that programmed because we did recognise that our first maps were just coarse. That, as we speak, that's actually going through the secondary procurement process at the minute.
Right, okay.
With a view of starting that within, certainly before the end of the summer, we'll be starting that.
And how will that run then in parallel to the initial audit report, which is this first phase of the legislation.
Yeah, well, the initial audit report and the more detailed maps are pretty much independent.
Yes.
Now, where it would be useful is on those reservoirs where you have a question mark whether they should be medium, because if they are to go into the low, well, then there's no requirement to have an inspection. But we're quite content that what we're talking about is 1 or 2 reservoirs that we're going to grant aid something that might turn out to not be necessary in the longer term.
Yes.
But we're talking about very insignificant costs in terms of the overall package.
Could I ask Kieran and David to think about, if you could, because there may well be more questions then on the clauses around risk designation. I think it would still be useful for the have used about. Now I know you probably go up to the lobby anyway for question time. If that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, members, we'll suspend then.
Right.
Okay, folks, that's us. We'll call David and Kieran back in.
We don't need to set the table again. I think you're happy enough that you've asked them all the questions you need, or
Yeah, well, maybe just what about the risk designation stuff?
I don't know if there's any other questions.
No questions. Okay.
I don't know if there is. I just.
Well, we'll see and we'll let it sit.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we discuss then, seek comments from members on the
Yeah.
here. Okay, members, is there any further comments? I know we're sort of cut right in the middle of discussions there, but is there any comments from members around the amendments that were discussed there? We sought and received clarification on clause 25, 2K. That was around the periods for supervising engineers' visits. David did explain that it wasn't so much the inspection, which would remain every 10 years. Is there any comments, members, on that? Okay, well again, whilst the difficulty for me has always been that knowing technically where and if and how and why this clause should be amended. It is difficult for us to factor in just how many visits we really do need and what those visits will look like, and of course remembering that the supervising engineer could also be reporting on more visits, because it's at least once in every 12 months, at least once in every 24 months for a medium risk or medium consequence reservoir. No further comments? Okay, we'll move on then. Members, we now need to consider the proposed amendments around risk designation, which is on page 2357 of your packs. Can I have comments from the members? Again, just to provide a summary, this is whereby there have been gains here for the committee and their concerns. That being the change in name with regards to designation from risk to consequence, and that then is read throughout the bill, and obviously means that there's changes and amendments throughout it. There is also discussions around how a reservoir owner or manager can actually change that consequence from high to medium, and also the effects where it would change from medium to high. Are there any comments, members, on this? I am still of the mind, whilst I welcome the amendments to on the issues that we've just talked about, it does still seem to be the case that it is, and whilst there is more flexibility in the system for a reservoir manager owner to change their own destiny. It still seems to be, when you look at the enforcements, there isn't much change from the first risk matrix that was produced, and it's still, to me, it's still very much do this or else, as opposed to do this and you will receive this. So it's, to put it more bluntly, it's probably still more stick than carrot. And whilst the goal in all of this is to prevent a breach, it's about getting that balance right with regards to incentivisation.
You mean grant aid, Chairman?
Well, in all of this, and it's a very good point, Joe, you raise, because we are discussing this bill, first of all, not knowing the context of the problem, not knowing the real problem out there. And that will come with the audit, the initial audit. But we also then, whilst we know there's grant aid for that audit, we also then have to be worried about, concerned about
Grant aid for capital improvements.
what grant aid, if any, there will be for capital improvements to help prevent the breach. So it's in that context that we're trying to look at the minutiae of each clause. So there's a massive elephant in the room, I suppose, for want of a better word, with regards to what grant assistance will be available, if it will be available, and how it would work.
Chair, it might have been better if this process here was delayed until all of that work had been done first, and then we were presented with all that assessment of what had to be done. It left us in a very clear position, wouldn't it?
Well, I agree, but then I suppose that's why then the amendments were made, whereby it was broken into two stages.
Yeah, 2 stages, yeah.
And the gift's still within the Assembly as to how we proceed, or if we proceed, I suppose, with the second part of
But Chairman, in this situation whereby, let's say there was a report, an alarming report, that required extensive capital improvements and investment, could we not have some sort of a subsection of a clause within there to at least identify a cost quantification of the capital works and a review or an examination of that cost with a view to having an assessment done by the department that if it was an excessive amount, that some consideration would be given to grant aid?
There is a lot of that, Joe, will come with the initial audit. A lot of that will come with the work that Rivers Agency are doing concurrently with their aerial stuff and their.
But that means we're still blindsided then. The audit report, the initial audit report, is the most critical benchmarking exercise, which is needed. That's it. The question is, do we continue to work in the blind in relation to if there was a situation where, let's say, a particular reservoir owner had to spend £1 million, and we're either one in the community sector or a private individual farmer.
We have had letters of assurance also from the Minister that if there was a scenario where there's say an imminent breach or a danger, that she would consider stepping in. My memory serves me right.
Was that a letter I think David sent?
Sorry. Maybe
Where will that money come from?
I don't mind bringing the officials up again just to clarify these points if that's in order.
Really? That's the point of clarification.
Yeah. Just on those points, you've heard my spiel there with regards to my concerns, the audit, the context of the problem, and grant aid, and the work, the information that we gleaned out from the audit and the work that Rivers Agency are conducting.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you want to just, I know that we're well past the point of clarification.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy to continue the discussion. The pause in the bill is very significant in that allows us to gather that information to then bid either within the department or to the executive to quantify that problem. I would hope that by including that pause in the legislation, that allows us to say, is this the right thing to do in terms of reservoir safety? Set aside that there's problems out there, because the mechanism of dealing with those problems is actually the pause. So irrespective of what the condition is this the right thing to do in terms of reservoir safety? And I think it is, to have somebody alongside the reservoir manager to help them deal with the risks associated with that. The scary bit is the quantum of that, but the pause deals with that, because the recurring issues don't come in on Royal Assent. It's for the Assembly then to vote on those. So if, whenever we come back here and say, well, now I know the condition of all 151 and there's some horrendous cases out there, that we know as a department, well, we're going to have an awful problem whenever we try and get part 2 of this to go forward in the absence of some capital assistance. So I think I would try and encourage you to try and separate those two issues. Is this the right thing to do in terms of legislation? Let's scrutinise that. And you have the assurance that the recurring bits won't then kick in because of the pause that we've actually built into that. So hopefully that gives you comfort that this isn't a hostage of fortune. You're not actually saying, whenever the committee finishes with that, and the decisions that you take and the scrutiny you take about that actually as you start to see this implemented, you sort of feel that tang of guilt that you've let something through because of the pause that's built into it. The other thing that I did say, and it's on the public record, whenever I was talking to the Minister about the grant aid, that the discussion then came about what happens if we found something that was in particularly bad condition. And I think irrespective of the pause, even though the recurring bits of the bill weren't started, that as a department, if we knew that there was something very, very serious out there, that we would not just acknowledge that information, but we would actually have to do some work on that. We may well have to step in, either under emergency powers or by working with that individual to try and find a way to at least control or manage that risk. And that commitment has already been given. I don't think it was clarified in the Minister's letter, but it certainly was in my recount of what the discussions that I had with the Minister. So,
yes.
And that's on the public record already.
Okay, Alvin Mullen.
No, I getting them reassurances is helpful.
Yeah.
I can see your point there, having engineers not there sitting around with the owner and would you say this is what you have to do, etc. You know. But when you look at that there, you may want to look at through that there. There's a safeguard in there as well, because maybe if there wasn't somebody there pushing the owner a little bit, the work may not get done.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And the more you get through all this report every week, I can see that myself, even though there's some things in it I'm not over the moon about, but I can see that there. If that push wasn't made, then the problem would only get bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the cost would get bigger.
Yeah.
And it would be no one for anybody, but I think that has to be in there somewhere. But I think there's safeguards in there now. I think I'd be pretty happy with what's in there at the minute.
Chairman, I welcome the clarification. Can I just throw in the red herring? Hamla. We're told that there's somewhere between 2 and 3 million that would need to be spent there.
2.5, yep.
And given that it's a nomad type ownership exercise,
Yep.
the trustees are dead and gone. Newry and Mourne Council seem to have some remit or function over it. Water service take water from it. They pay $4.5 grand a year rental for it.
Yep.
It seems a fuzzy sort of issue in relation to the fact that capital works and rest will have to be done at the outset. So there's an upfront example of something that has to be addressed pretty soon.
Yeah.
And it has to be addressed whether there's a pause or no pause in relation to the bill. Thanks, John.
Yeah. And I think it is a good example where we have actually brought people around in the room and outlined what their risks were and encouraged them to actually face up that and to start to address that. And that's the sort of approach that we would be trying to take if we find any other cases like that. And just so I can also address the point about the stick, you're absolutely right. The enforcement is all about stick in this legislation, but the reason why it's all about stick is we are currently self-regulated. We have just no legislation in terms of reservoir safety. And there are many examples where reservoir managers are not carrying out inspections and are not carrying out maintenance, and therefore the stick, unfortunately, is required. So you're right, Oliver, in what you say. It may well be painful, but this is the only way I think we're going to get reservoir managers in order to carry out the inspection. And there'll be a period of initial pain until we get them knocked into shape, or the reservoirs knocked into shape. Hopefully the assistants will help with that initial audit or the initial inspection, and then we'll be able to take stock and see what we'll have to do after that.
Okay, we can't seek really anywhere at the limit of the limit of the limit with regards to clarification. We really do have to push on with the report. And again, I say with my point with regards to the more stick than carrot, and you know the way the matrix is set out is. I'm still not content, but I want to have this. I have this thing in me that says that I need to be positive. So whilst I'm not content, it's more to do with the fact that we haven't really had the time in the process to consider the amendment fully and all the consequences of it. But I do also recognise the massive gains that the amendment brings. So I think that has to be illustrated somehow or demonstrated somehow in the report. If that's okay. Now, if the members agree with me, that's fine. If you don't, you have your own voice.
I think that's the key. The good thing, Chairman, is on the issues that were raised today, they can be recorded and our concerns can still be on the record.
Yeah, you know, there's some massive amendments to this bill that are brilliant and good safeguards. The pause. The two, you know, all of that, and all the consequence of reservoir, the high consequence, medium consequence as opposed to risk, all of that there is very, very good. You know, so there is some gains in these amendments, but it's just procedurally we haven't had enough time, and I'm still not sure how it plays out in my mind practically on the ground. Sorry, Oliver.
Just on that there, we as a group will be happy enough with where we are now at the minute. But just on that, what you're saying there, I think there's enough checks and balances within that report now. Like, if somebody does feel that they are getting over-pushed into doing reports or doing work, you can't appeal that. There's a mechanism in there for appealing that, and that is a safety valve in there for that. Gives them people a little bit of comfort to know what's in there. I do appreciate what you're saying, but I think we're happy enough with it.
Well, I can certainly put the question.
Just step back.
Okay, I can put the question. Is that okay? Are the committee content that the proposed amendments on the risk designation process address the concerns of the committee? Right. Now, can I just record that I'm not content, but I'm happy enough if this is the mind of the committee. That'll be reflected in the report. But I'm still of a mind not content because, again, it's length of time to consider and the process and everything else. But I do recognise, and I'm still not 100% right, if that's right, the matrix.
Well, Chairman, is that yourself as Chairman, as an individual, or you as a group, your group are not content? Because we need to clarify these things at this stage.
Well, I would say, I would, they're not here to speak for them, but I would imagine the group would not be content. Or the majority of the group would not be content.
But as long as
it's who's here.
Yeah, but
as long as I don't mind you not being content as a group, but as long as it's not going back to as a stick to beat any of the rest of the later stage, because we have gone through this and we've been most critical of it ourselves.
Oh, I know.
What we have seen, we've got to a stage now where really, you know, there is the checks and balances in there. There are a few things we're not happy in there with.
And, you know,
But it's really 17 to 20.
but I think we have to go ahead with it. I don't-
This is only 17 to 23, clauses 17 to 23. You know, the principle of the bill stands, everything else. And again, I'm much more comfortable than I was a couple of weeks ago. Let me say that very clearly. But it's just I'm not convinced that I'm content, I suppose is the best way to put it. But I'm content if the mind of the committee is content. That sounds like a riddle. Joanne Dobson.
Chair, I would share your concerns as well. I wouldn't be content either, but how could we, if it's the committee's will, but I would have certainly have concerns, as you've outlined, in 17 to
Well,
23, so I wouldn't be.
You have already taken your formal vote on it, so the formal vote, the formal decision of the committee is that it's not content with those clauses. What you're looking at now was with the amendments that came late in the day. I'm going to add, that's not part of the formal vote, but I will add paragraphs to the report to reflect the committee's thoughts and decisions on those amendments to help inform the House when those decisions are taken on the floor. Okay, so I can reflect that in a paragraph. But overall, there was at this moment in time, overall there is a feeling that the committee are content, but that there are still some concerns.
Certainly, yeah.
And that's as best as I can do. But there's still reservations. But it will, because there's a vote here now, the vote will be that the committee are content with the proposed amendments with reservations.
With reservations. Okay.
Is that okay?
Members content. And again,
I would like to see the inbuilt, but I following on through here, the way it has been, so I find, a wee bit hesitant there, to say that we're content with it, if there's members there that feel that they're not content with it at this particular junction.
if I can provide reassurance in this, whilst when we get in a plenary, it will be a political game or a political decision and political debate, within this, can I just say that the calibre of scrutiny and discussion and debate on this has always been of very, very good form. And a lot of decisions and votes have been taken on a very good so there's no question in my eyes of people trying to jockey for a position opposed to another party or another position. That's not what I'm here for. It's just I can't honestly sit here and say that I have enough understanding of this amendment to say I'm content. I wouldn't be content saying that.
Yeah, same here, likewise.
But I feel, because I'm a positive sort of person, that I need to acknowledge the gains that have been made in the amendments, and that's where I sit. Because I do believe that this needs further scrutiny. I do believe that may and well should happen in the debate, and should somehow be reflected in our report. Everything that we're ironing out now should be manifested in the report.
Okay. I can bring the report sections back next week.
So we'll bring those reports on the specific 17 to 23 clauses.
Those are the clauses, and those will be paragraphs 46 to 58, and maybe we'll just leave those entire clauses out.
Okay.
And I'll bring them back, or those entire paragraphs out, and I'll bring them back next week. Okay. Now I'll have to reflect the decision of the committee here, which is 4 members voting that they're content with amendments and 2 voting not content with the amendments. Okay. And that would be a correct assessment of the position.
Yeah.
Okay, just before we get into the consideration of the report, not to prolong any further, but I think just at this point, now that we are going to consider the report, I would just like to acknowledge the work and the commitment from David, Kieran and all of the team who are here religiously every week and who have helped and assisted us through this process, not only with amendments and everything else, but with the clarification that we have sought week in, week out. So again, thank you very much. If there's credit to be given, it's certainly to these people, because they're on top of their game with regards to their knowledge of this and the ins and outs of the bill. So thank you very much. Okay, before I get all emotional, move on to the consideration of the report. Can I refer members to the draft report on the Reservoirs Bill at pages 58 to 132? But at pages 58 is the draft report on the Reservoirs Bill. I will now take members through each section, paragraph of the report and seek agreement or otherwise. The main body of the report is at pages 58 to 124. Can I refer members to the introduction, which is at pages 58 and 59. Are members content with the introduction at pages 58 to 59? It's basically just the... Okay. Can I refer members to the section on consideration of the bill at pages 60 to 112? And again, that's basically just the key issues, going right through basically the report, cost of compliance. All the big issues are within that.
Can I just check, Chairman, on paragraph 14?
Okay.
We're going to go through the paragraphs by paragraphs here, yes.
We're going to go through,
Yeah, so.
We will now deal with the paragraphs on the background of the bill. What page is that? Just to...
Paragraph 60.
Sorry,
Page 60.
Page 60.
I just want to check, Chairman, that those are definitive numbers: 77 in the public sector, 59 in the private sector, 9 in the third sector, and 6 with ownership unknown. So we're absolutely clear that's okay.
That's the evidence we've been given, yeah.
These are all inspected there.
Okay, we'll now deal with the paragraphs of on the background of the bill. Are members content with paragraph 11 to 14? Agreed?
Agreed.
Oh, it's just fact. Are members content with paragraph 15 about key issues? Okay, members agreed? Yep. Okay, moving on. We will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of the audit of reservoirs. Are members content with paragraph 16? Could I just say on paragraph 16, I think we maybe should make this a bit stronger. The committee examined the evidence provided to it and had concerns that the department had not proved the need for the bill. The committee is strongly of the opinion that before the bill was introduced in the Assembly, the department should have carried out an audit of the 151 reservoirs which will fall under the remit of the bill. This audit could have ascertained the condition and the likely cost of bringing the 151 reservoirs up to an acceptable standard for public safety. An audit would have provided the proof that the bill was required and that the policy approach within the bill and panel engineer system was the correct approach. With the exception of the evidence provided on Camlock Lake, as discussed below, the department has, in the opinion of the committee, only been able to provide anecdotal evidence that the legislative approach suggested in the bill is required. I just think we need to, say that in our scrutiny of this, it has proved very, very difficult to actually scrutinise the clause by clause because of that the lack of information and that blindness. I just think we need to be stronger on that. So if we could maybe get started to add a line and then bring it back, would that be okay? Because it has proved, it has been, if you like, a handicap for us with regards to. Okay. Are members content with paragraph 17? Agreed? Yeah. Are members content with paragraph 18? Agreed? Okay. Okay, that's agreement. Are members content with paragraph 19?
Yeah.
Okay, are members content with paragraph 20? Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, are members content with paragraph 21?
Yep.
Okay. Are members content with paragraphs 22? Okay. One sentence. Are members content with paragraph 23? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 24? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 25?
Yep.
Okay, we will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of cost of compliance. Are members content with paragraph 26? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 27? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 28? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 29? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 30?
Yep.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 31? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 32? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 33? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 34?
Just on the 33,
Sorry, 33. Okay.
yeah. The,
On page 10 or 11.
on the Institute of Civil Engineers, Appendix 2,
Yep. Go on ahead.
why would they think it's a great pity if they were taken out of service and abandoned? Somebody may want to know that.
Sorry, say again. Sorry, Albert, couldn't hear.
The bottom part of their thing, they say that the repairs to a dam is a serious issue if we are to avoid many dams being taken out of service and abandoned. This would be a great pity.
Just not getting that.
That's what they say. That's
Yeah, that's just in speech marks. That's just what
We're not.
they've reported. That's not.
They might take issue on that.
That's not our committee. That's the Institute of Civil Engineers.
Yeah.
Their committee, and that's basically just a quote.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
It's basically what they're saying, and basically reinforcing, if you like, the issue of regards to abandonment and out of service. So again, they're saying that would be a great pity. So yes, something needs to be done. You happy enough?
Yeah.
It's just it's quoting, okay. Are members content then with paragraph 34? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 35? Can you just mark that we've all checked for spelling and punctuation. Are members content with paragraph 36? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 37? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 38? Okay. Members content? We will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of cost recovery. Again, this was another issue a big issue for the committee. Are members content with paragraph 39? Members content? Are members content with paragraph 40? Okay, again a very important paragraph, paragraph 40. Are members content with paragraph 41? Content?
Yeah.
Are members content with paragraph 42? Okay. We will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of grant aid. Are members content with paragraph 43? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 44? Okay, are members content with paragraph 45? Okay. Yeah, okay, we're going to then we're going to leave 46, the risk designation process, that's the debate we just had, for next week, and allow Stella time to write that up. So that takes us to 59.
59, on page 78 of the pack.
On page 78 of your packs, page 21 of the report, and the subheading Reservoirs Panel Engineer System. We'll now deal with those paragraphs, paragraph 59. Are members content with paragraph 59? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 60?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 61?
Yep.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 62? Okay.
Yep.
Are members content with paragraph 63?
It's a spelling mistake there, which I correct.
Okay. Members content with 63? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 64? Okay, we will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of operating regime. Are members content with paragraph 65? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 66? Okay, are members content with paragraph 67? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 68? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 69?
No.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 70?
Do you want that one amended?
Members, this is the well, basically the opinion of the committee on this. Are members content, or do you wish to discuss this to amend it in any way?
Chairman, did David signal earlier on that he could still have some movement in that section? But I think if we can offer the gift horse for students who need it. Might as well go down for some notable advances and the changes, you know.
Okay, how would you amend that? That's the only.
I'd ask Rivers Agency to bring forward an amendment by September.
Yeah, well, we could ask Rivers Agency to squeeze out something
Yeah.
more. Members.
I think that's where there's still a wee bit of reservation about power and control of the engineer, you know.
Obviously it states in the previous paragraph that we don't have the expertise to
Okay.
amend.
I'll amend paragraph 70 to reflect that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of decommissioning. Pages 84 of our packs, page 27 of the report. Paragraphs on the issue of decommissioning. Are members content with paragraph 71?
Yeah.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 72? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 73?
Yeah.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 74? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 75? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 76? Okay.
Yeah.
Are members content with paragraph 77? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 78? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 79?
Just on that there, we've gone through that from 73 to 79 and that there. And I think there's some important things within that, and that would raise questions on planning law.
I have a section dealing with planning.
There is a section with planning.
It's coming up in paragraph
that-
86.
Yeah, there's
And
that's
if you feel it's not strong enough, you can let me know when we get there. We'll be there shortly. Is that okay?
just a decommissioning.
Okay.
I think it clearly states in there, they're not sure what the planning law states, especially number 73. Could be a debate on that, you know.
I'd add in a paragraph there to reflect that.
Okay, and we'll bring that back next week. That's 73.
73, 79 is an issue of decommissioning and planning issue, the environment and the planning authority.
Okay. We will now deal with the paragraph on the issue of delegated powers. Are members content with paragraph 80? Okay, members content? Yep. We will now deal with the paragraphs on the issue of the definition of a controlled reservoir. Are members content with paragraph 81? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 82?
Yeah.
Okay. Are members content with paragraph 83? Okay. Are members content with paragraph 84? Okay. We'll now deal with a paragraph on the issue of removal of low-risk reservoirs from the operating requirements of the bill. Are members content with paragraph 85? Okay.
Yeah.
We now deal with the paragraph on the issue of reservoirs and planning issues. Are members content with paragraph 86? Just I'll address you specifically, Oliver, on that, 86 there.
You happy enough with 86?
Oh, aye, that's all the stuff downstream, yeah, which is different from the one in dimension.
Okay.
In 73 and 79 are different.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy enough with that, yeah.
Members content then? Okay, pages 92 to 112 then of the pack deals with the summary of evidence. If members are content, we will consider this on a page-by-page basis as opposed to a paragraph. The page numbers referred to are your pack pages and not the pages of the report, if that's okay. So we start at page 92. Are members content with page 92? Okay. Are members content with page 93? Okay. Are members content with page 94? Are members content with page 95? Okay. Are members content with page 96? Are members content with page 97? Okay, are members content with page 98? Are members content with page 99? Okay, are members content with page 100? Are members content with page 101? Are members content with page 102? Are members content with page 103? Are members content with page 104? Are members content with page 105? Are members content with page 106? Are members content with page 107? Are members content with page 108? Okay, are members content with page 109? Are members content with pages 110? Okay, are members content with page 111? Okay, are members content with page 112? Okay, pages 113 to 124 deals with the committee clause by clause consideration. If members are content, we will go through this on a page by page basis. Are members content with page 113? Are members content with page 114? Are members content with pages 115? Are members content with pages 116? Are members content with pages 117? Okay. Members content with pages 118? Are members content with page 119? Are members content with pages 120? Are members content with pages 121? Members content with pages 122? Are members content with pages 123? Are members content with pages 124? Okay, members, can I advise members that we will now consider Appendix 1 to 7?
Chairman, just on page 114 there,
114?
that section that relates to further note that Stella's going to take, is that right, in relation to...
Well, that's the formal vote.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
That's the formal vote.
Right,
The record of it.
That's okay, that's okay.
But in the...
And the paragraphs that I haven't, that I'm going to bring back next week.
Yeah, that will all be...
That's okay.
2, 5. Okay, appendix, we need to consider now the appendix 1 to 7, which are pages 125 to 132. The content of each appendix has not been included, but rather a list of what they will contain. One full copy of the appendix 1 to 7 is available to view if anyone wishes. So we all proceed then. Are members content with appendix number 1, which is the minutes of proceedings? Okay, agreed.
Yeah.
Are members content with appendix 2, which will be the minutes of evidence, as they are listed out there? Are members content with Appendix 3, which is the written submissions? Great. Okay, are members content with Appendix 4, which is the stakeholder event? Okay. Are members content with Appendix 5, which is a list of witnesses? Great. Are members content with Appendix 6, which is the research paper? Yeah. And then with regards to Appendix 7, Stella, you want to come in there?
Just to say, because there is so much there, I'm subdividing that into 2 separate appendices, one for correspondence from Dard and one from correspondence from other people, just to make it clearer and easier to read. So nothing for you to worry about, it's just a presentation thing.
Okay, having heard that, members, are you content?
Yeah.
Oh.
Same list that's there on Appendix 7.
More or less, yeah,
Read
just
it off.
dividing it up,
Okay.
yeah.
So Dard makes up the bulk of the correspondence, but it's from basically from 5 down to
Yeah.
38, and then our appendix for the other ones.
I'm bringing the list back next week, I'll send it just for...
Okay, at the meeting next week then, members, we will consider the executive summary and any amendments which have been made today before formally ordering to print. Okay, members, happy enough with the process?
Yeah.
Any questions on it? Okay, happy enough? Okay, moving on then, members. I'll be counting pages in my sleep. Agenda item number 6 then is the oral briefing on rural isolation and farmer welfare issues from our research team. Mark Allen, researcher. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 134 to 135 and a research paper at pages 136 to 149. Can I welcome Mark Allen, Assembly Research Officer, to the committee. As always, Mark, you're very welcome here.
Chair.
Following the briefing, then I'll seek questions from the members. Members will recall that as a committee we agreed that the next review would be on rural isolation, poverty and rural farmer well-being. This is likely to commence in the autumn and hopefully conclude by December 2014. This may result in a committee position paper followed by an assembly debate. Mark's paper, scoping paper, has outlined some of the issues which he'll go through now, which members may wish to explore during the review. However, members may have further ideas they wish to see included. So, without further ado, Mark, I'll hand the floor over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. And as you say, Chair, I suppose the motivation for this piece of work was the discussions you held earlier in the year in relation to your forward work programme. And I suppose it's really around this concept of rural isolation that I've tended to focus on, but as you could probably tell by the convoluted title, we kind of veered into other areas, and I think maybe that's one of the points I'll come back to further on. But I suppose the first thing to say maybe in this is the paper doesn't propose or adhere to a particular definition of the terms the rural isolation or poverty, for the simple reason that and had some experience this in previous work, it's quite hard to find one. There are different schools of thought in this, so the approach that we have taken really is that this is a scoping paper. It's not a comprehensive assessment of the issues. It's, I suppose, rather designed to try and stimulate conversation and maybe inform your efforts moving forward in terms of maybe where the direction of travel you might want to take. In terms of the actual approach, as I say and I emphasise again, there is a lack of an agreed definition on what really constitutes isolation, or rural isolation more particularly. As a result, the paper has really, I suppose, is focused on what we have termed as contributing factors in relation to rural isolation under 3 broad headings. And those are geographical factors, wider societal factors as we have labelled them, and poverty and income factors. So those are the 3 lenses almost which you looked at the issue through. To look at the first one, and I suppose is probably the most widely acknowledged and probably easiest understood, is that concept of geographical factors that contribute to isolation. And I suppose, as you can see in the paper, I've set out a number of those. I mean, page 138 in your pack there in figure 1, looks at, I'm sure something you're all well aware of in terms of the Noble Index of Deprivation, and the indices, and specifically there the proximity of services domain, where you can see very clearly in Figure 1 the fact that there are the top 10% of super output areas are highlighted in the darkest colour possible. It emphasises, I suppose, that there are particular issues, for example, in the west, in the northeast, the southeast. These are in terms of accessing key services, things like GPs, A&E, dentists, opticians, pharmacists, job centres, post office. The list is there in the paper, but it gives you an idea of fairly essential services, and that's, I suppose, a well-established issue. And the specific issue of health, and I suppose a type 1 emergency provision, and what I mean in there is really a consultant-led service with designated accommodation for the reception of emergency care patients, providing both emergency medicine and emergency surgical service on a round-the-clock basis. That's set out in Figure 2, which is on page 139. And again, it highlights, I suppose, the challenge that people in particular parts of the province face in terms of accessing those services. Again, predominantly west and mid-Tyrone, up in the Glens, down again in the southeast. But there are other people who are experiencing challenges too, and I suppose one of the things that this figure also illustrates, this was actually done for health colleagues, is it actually identifies the type of road network that people would actually be facing travelling on. So distance is undoubtedly a factor, but the type of road that you're going to have to travel on could equally be a factor at particular times of year. We're moving on then, I suppose, look at issues like, for example, access to a car or van. The 2011 census data that we have shows that the total number of households in Northern Ireland that do not have a car or van available is 23%. That climbs to 45% of one-person households and 53% of one-person households aged 65 and over. To date, there's been no urban-rural split on that information, but it would be, I suppose, it makes sense that the lack of access to a car or van would be more challenging the more remote your location. So it's interesting the fact that there is still even a significant number of people who don't have that ability to access a car or van. I suppose a big one, and increasingly moving forward, and the committee will be well aware of in terms of even how Dard deliver many of their services, is the whole issue of access to 3G, mobile and even broadband. I suppose the information we looked at there was taken really from Ofcom's Communications Market Report. And that really highlighted, I suppose, a couple of things. Firstly, the 3G coverage in Northern Ireland is the worst in the UK. It's the lowest across the UK, whilst 3/4 of mobile customers here expressed difficulties, the majority of which who were actually specifically stated an issue said that they couldn't get a signal at all. Again, would add to a sense of isolation. And equally, I suppose, in terms of rural broadband, the challenge that we face there, there's a recognition, I think, and Ofcom definitely highlighted that in the report, that rural broadband provision has improved, but it's still not as high as the overall rural figure for the UK. Interestingly, however, rural broadband uptake is actually better than urban Northern Ireland broadband uptake. But it's still, again, given the way, as I said, information is being provided, if you don't have access to broadband in particular, it can be quite limiting and quite isolating. So those are almost physical and geographical factors. Turning to the wider societal factors, this was, I suppose, a bit harder to pin down, but we picked out some of the ones that we thought maybe have most relevance. One of the most interesting ones being the rise in living alone. The Northern Ireland Continuous Household Survey really emphasised the fact that there is a growing number of people who are living alone. The reasons for that are hard to understand. People may be living longer. Is it marriage breakdown? Is it relationship breakdown? Is it simply people choosing to live alone? We're not clear, but the reality is that there are more people who are in that position, particularly aged between 16 and 59. Now, I have to emphasise that living alone does not automatically mean that you're isolated. You could have chosen to live alone. However, it may well contribute to a sense of isolation for some of the people within that group, and I'll maybe touch upon that and maybe some of the later work that we looked at as well. One of the frustrations, I suppose, with the household continuous survey data there too, however, is that there is no rural-urban disaggregation. So we don't know if there are more rural people living alone, or if it's urban, or if it's even across rural and urban communities. Another element here, one which members will be well aware of, and that's the idea of an ageing population. Figure 4 there in your pack on page 142 really shows the projected increase in those aged 55 plus up to 2016. Again, quite clear in the sense that there's a higher proportion of those people within, and those rises within the rural west. That might increase the rationale and demand, I suppose, for developing new services or retaining existing ones. But we can't say that definitively. The other thing, I suppose, is that the growth in particularly the rural older population might actually reflect the fact that more people want to move to a rural community. This idea, as we've heard often, of people buying into the idea of a rural idyll, where you move, and this impression that, you know, it's motherhood and apple pie, everybody speaks to you, everybody's friendly, and then maybe people do move there. There's other literature would highlight maybe it's not as people maybe perceived it to be. There are challenges. But I suppose the reasons that people are moving there, and I suppose the actual impact that has in their life, we can't definitively say. Some people will have a positive experience, others may not. I want to move then just to the final area we looked at, which was around poverty and income. And I suppose a couple of things to highlight here. Firstly, in relation to household income and poverty. I suppose we looked there, and you've highlighted in the paper, New Policy Institute paper published in March 2014, which really shows that between 2007 and 2011-12, the average income or median income in Northern Ireland fell by almost 10%. That's compared to the 7% for the UK as a whole. So poverty more of an issue here, it would appear, in terms of incomes. The interesting thing as well in that paper is the exception of poverty amongst pensioners. Northern Ireland is witnessing an increase in the number of households living in poverty, and the rises are higher than those being experienced in GB. So it's only pensioners really who are bucking the trend in Northern Ireland. Equally, on an all-Ireland basis, poverty rates here also seem to be higher than those found in the rest of Ireland. And that's, I suppose, based on before housing cost measure from 2011. And I also, I suppose, want to draw attention to the fact that in terms of very specifically around rural poverty and rural disadvantage, a previous New Policy Institute paper published in 2012 established that there was substantial poverty in some rural areas. Actually, when you look at the information there, it does seem to suggest that there is, again, it's the west of Northern Ireland, both urban and rural, where poverty, there's particular problems. Fuel poverty, again, a very particular symptom here, an indicator. 2013 OFM DFM research that was commissioned really highlights the fact that Northern Ireland is the worst affected part of the UK. That's table 1, page 143, if you want to see the comparative data. And equally, the most recent Northern Ireland Housing Executive House Conditions Survey from 2011 highlighted that fuel poverty affected 50% of households living in isolated rural areas in Northern Ireland. And the other data which I've included there, I think, which is the only real data set which we could find, which was very particular to the farming community, and these three lenses, as I said, was that one relating really to farm incomes. And the data, I suppose, there in figure 5, page 144 in your packs, really just shows the variation that there's been in the three measures of income over the last number of years. And I suppose it stands to sense again that a variation in income and a fall particularly can have an adverse impact on a family's ability to engage, to interact. And that, I suppose, can be isolating. Very quickly, just to look at some of the potential impacts of isolation or rural isolation. I have to say, when we looked at this, we find it hard to quantitatively and definitively measure what those impacts are. The reality is that isolation or rural isolation could be a physical reality, could be a potential symptom of or contributor to poverty or low income, or it could be both of those, depending on the circumstances people find themselves in. And that's really, I suppose, one of the points I want to get across. It's the fact that a lot of this comes down to individual experience. There could be, by way of emphasis on that again, to draw maybe an earlier point, there could be individuals who are isolated through choice, but there could equally be people who find themselves there through circumstance and who are unable to influence that position, and it may well be detrimental on those occasions. Just table 2 on page 145, I would draw your attention to. We just had put in some of the impacts which have been researched through various academic papers in relation to the impacts of isolation. The first one I draw attention to, there's mental health issues, and there's a study we accessed from New Zealand, which you can see there showed that the most socio-economically isolated groups in Auckland had 56% more anxiety or mood disorders compared to the least isolated. So again, mental health impact there seems quite clear. In relation to suicide, obviously a very emotive issue, and I suppose one that is very topical in Northern Ireland too. We looked at research there in Italy, which really established a positive correlation between rural isolation and suicide, particularly in relation to men. There was also highlighted in relation to women that income and educational achievement were key determinants there. And in Wales and England, we also looked at the fact of the impact of social fragmentation. The proportion of single-person households seemed to have a correlation, again, with rates of suicide in both urban and rural areas. And given what I said earlier about the rise in single-person households, could well be a factor. The other potential impact here is that of lower life expectancy. And I suppose, again, looking at research in England, that established a direct correlation between the degree of social isolation and the higher death risk. And this is between older people, I have to say. So those who really were isolated more from family and friends had a 26% higher death risk over a 7-year period. So again, it shows the impact of being able to interact with people and the positive benefits that can bring. I don't want to dwell on the approaches to dealing with isolation and poverty. It's really pages 146 to 148 in Table 3. Suffice to say that there is very clear from that table, I think, the conclusion can be drawn that Northern Ireland, to a lesser extent the Republic of Ireland, have placed a greater emphasis on rural isolation and poverty and farmer-specific programmes than the rest of the UK has done. And that's interesting, I suppose, in the sense that other parts of the UK seem to have utilised mechanisms like the rural development programmes, utilised the means, for example, like a rural proofing mechanism in England. There hasn't been a specific standalone programme such as we have, and to a lesser extent they have in the south. The closing comments and conclusions then, just very quickly. I suppose there is a lack of clarity and consensus around what constitutes rural isolation, and in many ways I think that maybe means that there may be value in the committee further exploring and ultimately maybe committing to their own definition if you move forward on this. Now, I appreciate that will be challenging, but I equally would say it in the sense that I think without that you could be covering a very, very broad brushstroke that may not actually maybe to be of benefit to you. The other thing I suppose to maybe say is that I think the approach that we took here, maybe looking at contributing factors, could be of value to you maybe going forward in terms of maybe identifying potential witnesses, potential programmes or potential solutions. The other one I want to emphasise is that the inclusion of rural poverty within this paper, that's proven challenging because poverty could be a symptom of isolation, it could be a contributing factor, or it could be both. We're not clear. The only thing we can say is that it's a definite, strong and undoubted relationship.
We'll just check. We'll do the long planning yet.
It is a vote.
That's a vote now. That's a vote.
I've 3-4 bullet points to do and I'll be finished.
We'll push you out, Mark.
Minutes to go to the chamber.
Okay. Pressure's on.
I suppose the other thing I want to say, just to state it numerous times from the paper, many of the factors are individual impacts. So these aren't things that will impact upon one whole village, maybe not even one whole family. It could be individuals within those. And I suppose that's where the use of prescriptive and all-inclusive terms is maybe next to impossible. I also want to say, I suppose, that the nature of rural isolation means that, as we established, there can be very negative impacts, mental health, suicide risk, life expectancy. But again, that won't affect everybody negatively, but for those that it will, it can be a problem. I'll call it quits there because I have 2 more, but you can see them there.
Okay, can you hang about because there will all be members.
I can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Assembly, Committee Room 30.
Okay, we'll resume, members. Declare the meeting open to the public. Again, sorry, Mark, you got caught mid-flight there. Is there anything else you want to finish up on, or
just
a couple of points?
Just 2 bullet points, Chair, and then that's me finished. I suppose I think these are maybe the more important ones. I think one of the things that maybe is useful to flag to the committee is I think the paper has established that rural isolation can have negative impacts. I suppose what is also interesting is some of the factors we picked up do appear to be either stable or even in some instances, the likes of, as I said, a number of people living alone actually on the rise, which is maybe something to consider moving forward. The other point I want to make, I suppose, is the initial remit of the paper was to consider the impacts of rural isolation on farmer well-being. As I said earlier, we found it challenging to disaggregate farmers from the rural community. Now that's in some ways not surprising, equally emphasises how integral a part of the rural community farmers are. But it's equally, I suppose, maybe we're saying as well that there could well be other specific elements that you want us to focus on. I said the only one I really drew attention to was farmer income, but all of the other issues definitely will impact on farmers and farm families equally. And the final one I suppose to say is, just as I said earlier, is that Northern Ireland's approach, and to a lesser extent those used in the Republic of Ireland, are actually ahead of the game in terms of what's being done in other parts of the UK, in terms of the very rural specific, very rural anti-poverty social inclusion programmes, as compared to what are maybe broader rural development anti-poverty programmes. So I suppose that maybe is unique in this regard. I suppose maybe the question then does come, is that the right approach, is it the wrong approach, what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages? But that's maybe the final point, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Okay, put out to members. Declan McAleer.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to commend you, Mark, for doing a fine piece of work there and doing that research paper. I suppose one of the things I want to flag up is something that I mentioned in the past, was, you see, in terms of, we're looking at hearing some evidence from a number of stakeholders. One of them I'd be keen to maybe delve a wee bit more into would be NISRA, because I know that a number of engagements that I've had with some of the rural stakeholder groups, they're very anxious that the way that deprivation is measured in rural areas actually underestimates the extent of deprivation. For example, they make the point that the fact that the basic services only is weighted at 10% overall score.
Yes, of the multiple deprivation measure.
Exactly, and the fact that I know that the Church in Scotland and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation done a lot of work, and they reckon that in terms of expenditure, it could cost up to 20% more to live in rural areas than in urban areas, but expenditure isn't taken into account in terms of how deprivation is assessed. So I'm just wondering, would it be an idea to factor that in maybe as well as when we're looking at some of the stakeholders, because it's a very serious issue. And I'm talking from a personal point of view as well, because I know that the West, and you can see it from the map there yourself, that the West is very highly deprived in terms of access to basic services. And I know, like, one example in the super output area of Owen Killew, which is right where I live, it's the #1 most deprived area in the whole of the north for basic services. Yet, because basic services isn't rated that high, it doesn't feature in the top 10 or 20% of the overall deprived. So there's a wee bit of, I think there's a wee thing there that needs to be looked at. So I'm wondering, I can make that proposition, if we could maybe get NISRA to come as one of the people to come and give us a wee bit of evidence on that. Right?
Can I maybe just add on that? And I think it's a very good point. Is I think if you look to the multiple deprivation measure, as Declan said, 50% of that is the employment and income domains, which they're not employment and income. It's actually benefit uptake. And I know you mentioned, I didn't put it in the paper, but it may well be. I think you've sparked off that idea again, is in the sense that I have seen some anecdotal work. Now again, it's anecdotal that suggests that some rural communities maybe were less likely to draw down benefit, either through a lack of knowledge, a lack of support, or a stigma in some instances. And I think some JRF actually had done some work on that previously, so yes, there could well be factors. Multiple deprivation is useful, but it's by no means the full picture, I suppose, in that regard, but it's very often what's used to allocate resources.
Well, I think, what's also important is that, I lost my train of thought there, is the fact that I think it's startling that 23% of the West, the rural West, is in poverty, and if it's the case that, okay, I accept that they're saying that there's based on the median income. If it's the case that that the way it's measured even isn't properly assessed, then that even could be much higher again.
It could be, and again, there could be particular elements or particular focus, it could be one small part of a particular area. Super output area, whatever, is quite a large geography, as is the rural West. There could well be pockets in that where it's far higher or lower. I suppose it's very much I suppose I emphasise it's very much in terms of individual circumstance, which can vary widely.
On that point, because I can remember reading 23 in rural West, 23 in urban West. The super output areas will not differentiate. It will skew it towards the urban, so it could be much higher in the rural West.
There's no question that there's pockets of deprivation within those very, very wide geographical areas, which would be much higher level of deprivation than 23%.
No, I think it would be a fair comment.
Yeah.
because you can have someone of a very high income could be living beside somebody who's at virtually no income, and it can be.
I think it's even more extreme in rural areas where in urban areas you'll probably get more of a concentration of social factors, but in rural areas you could have somebody who is quite well off, and large house, and no good income, living right next door to somebody who's at the breadline. It's
yes, no, it is. It's like
It's more scattered.
Yeah.
Diverse.
So we'll add Israel.
Yeah, I think that'll be important.
The whole issue around measuring rural deprivation.
Just the measurement, and then how that measurement is used to actually direct services to. Alderman Wall?
Yes, Chair, I do want to congratulate you as well, Mark, for putting that together. One of the things that we talk about isolation in the countryside is access to a car. In a lot of cases, there's a one-car family, and that car is used by a lot of the times by the man to go to work, or sometimes the woman to go to work, and then some of them have to stay behind. Another issue not topped on there is planning. The planning laws, urban and rural, actually are not going together in tandem at all. For example, you can relocate a business into a rural area, but you cannot get planning permission for a new business in a rural area unless you have a farming number, and that, it's very, very hard. That's only one example. The older population, that's a very relevant one. I think it's one that's getting more and more important, and the numbers are getting bigger, and will be through this transforming your care package on health. For example, on the care homes and that there, that issue hasn't gone away. The more people now are being encouraged to keep the elderly at home, which in turn will then put pressure on. For example, if there's two people working, somebody will eventually have to stop working, stay at home and be the carer, and that eventually causes problems as well. The benefit cutbacks is another thing that is going to be a big one. The Mara project that you did mention in your report there,
yes,
it has thrown up a lot of very interesting information on that, and be something worthwhile to visit. The noble indices, I agree with everything Declan has said. In one town alone, in Ballycastle, one side of the street is covered by Noble, and the other side of the street is not. Now, we still get that in this day and age. It does do harm to the rural area in a lot of cases, the Noble, because, for example, if you're not covered by Noble, you can't get any grant aids, for example, for Sure Start, for childcare. All those issues predicate on your deprivation levels. And as what Declan was saying there, an area there in rural areas could score less than a rural area or an urban area beside them. And for example, in the Rural Development Programme, a postcode area in the middle of Larne scored, where a rural area did not score because of that, where those deprivation levels came in. So that all has to be looked at. And the other thing is RPA, we have centralising of services now. And though there is checks and balances in there for you to apply for contracts to local authorities, etc., it's still taking you away from the main hub, and those living in the periphery of a rural area will find it harder to apply to get work out of that. But if we do go out to do any kind of monitoring on this when it starts, I would propose that the two areas mentioned in there, the West Tyrone and the Glens, be two of the areas that we maybe should look at to go out to get reports on what it's like in those areas. Okay. Because those are areas that are suffering and will continue to suffer. Health is another big issue, and getting to hospitals. The Causeway Hospital is closed, it's going to leave people further away. There's a debate yesterday in the House here on transport. Public transport is another issue. There's a myriad of things, and what I've always gone about is disability and special needs. Services for that are getting worse and worse,
and there's no way for them now to interact with other people because there's no transport out there to help them interact. And it is doing harm in rural areas. Must look at it, and I do believe that Noble should be actually done away with, and look at the areas on a holistic approach, not segregating them and not picking areas out. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of valid questions there. That might not necessarily for Mark, of course, 'cause Mark has done the research, but for the people that we have in front of us as we conduct this review. Whilst I agree with everything the two contributors have said, planning, let's take planning for instance, and it's the different planning policies even, from urban to rural. PPS 21. Also, if you live in an area of outstanding natural beauty, you're penalised straight away. So again, with isolation or with maybe more so poverty, you and proximity to services, it's very, very hard even for a local mechanic to set up in a rural part, as opposed, because they will try to direct them into a village setting or even a town. And I always find that to be bizarre. So there's all these things that we could look. I think we could struggle to keep this focused and not wide-ranging, as you've already alluded to, Mark. Now, I'm also aware that there's bound to be layers and layers of review, report, research over the years, not necessarily on a specific issue of rural isolation and poverty and well-being, but also other reports looking at our specific issues where this will actually, there'll be an issue or an item that could be used. And I'm wondering, is there any way that we can, instead of conducting a completely new review, is there any trawl that can be done? Because I'm thinking rural transport. Rural transport is bound to have been covered in DRD.
It has. I made reference to it there in the table, Chair, and you're right. There's been numerous reviews made, and I suppose the how effective services are, who uses them. I suppose the difficulty with this, I suppose I almost go back to work that I had done very early in this mandate for yourselves in relation to the Rural White Paper.
Yes.
It can cover nearly
everything. Nearly
all the departments at the executive level, and I suppose that's maybe one of the challenges. I suppose why I say again, I think it's a hard beast to grapple with, to try and define exactly what it is that you want to look at.
Yeah.
Because you can go into rural proofing very readily here as well. Mm-hmm. Because I suppose, as I said, the approach in England is, well, if we have effective rural proofing, we can ensure that rural areas aren't disadvantaged and the people who live in them. So it's, I suppose I'm not coming with answers, but maybe it's not that helpful, but I think it probably, from your perspective as a committee, might make it easier if you tried to look at it, as I said, maybe through some causal factors or whatever. Might maybe be an easier way to maybe attract what different departments this impacts upon as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can nearly conduct a review on terms of reference for a review.
Correct.
And that's what I'm. So any piece of work we do, I want it to be focused and of worth. And not inventing the wheel. What's your thoughts, Declan? Because I know this is something that you've always been. Have you any ideas in mind? Is there anything that, if you were to pluck out one specific issue, now, you don't have to answer it tonight, even.
Well, I've always felt strongly about how we actually go about measuring deprivation. I think that's it's crucial. So it is.
I'd actually agree with you.
It's crucial, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned having Israel as a stakeholder here.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if we don't get that right, then that's going to have a huge impact for, say, for example, government funding and for programs or everything that flows from it.
Yes. Would it be of a mind that the committee centres and focuses on that as a basis, and then anything that flows out of that can be a.
We must remember as well is that, see, when you're looking at the likes in Israel, you're looking at a broad range of domains as well.
Oh, well, you are. You're looking at proximity services.
It's not zero, and
Chair, can I maybe just build on Declan's issue? And this was in previous employment, even I've come up against this issue a few times. And the challenge I remember in my time when I've been in RCN wasn't even so much in terms of Noble. It was how some departments or agencies used Noble. I suppose, as Declan alluded to, even in terms of the top 10% of multiple deprivation, which are predominantly urban SOAs or wards.
Yep.
Whereas if you look at the individual domain areas, as Declan said, the proximity to services domain is 10% of the multiple deprivation matrix. So it's almost how different departments you can either do the easy one, we'll take the top 10% of multiple deprivation, or we'll try and do maybe something slightly different, which is maybe again where the DARD approach differed in a sense that to the anti-poverty and social inclusion programmes have tried to get away from the traditional way that maybe government departments have accessed and actually allocated resources. And that maybe, as I suppose I said, was quite unique, even looking across the rest of the UK and even in Ireland.
Yeah. William Irwin, you want to?
Yeah, it's quite difficult actually, because you can't really box areas in, because you could find poverty and 2 doors up the road somebody could be a millionaire. I mean, it's not, you can't, maybe like some areas in the inner cities, maybe it's easier boxing. When you go to country and rural areas, I don't think you can, you can't identify areas such as this area as poverty and deprivation in this area has. It's not just as simple as that, I don't think,
Well, are you happy enough to proceed then on the grounds that we seriously have a good, serious look and scrutiny of the measurement tools and the apparatus used and the mechanics used by departments in measuring? Would that be members happy?
I think that apparatus is out there. It's
whether it's fit for purpose.
What that apparatus is doing.
Yeah.
I think we look. Then you'd have to look at the areas. There was a grant came in there where they didn't use the Noble indices at all and determined the grant aid for. And I think I was through the Rural Development Programme and in parts they didn't use the Noble indices in some parts in that. And it worked well. They looked at the actual grant itself. But again, it's going to boil down to the thing of how do you separate urban from rural? Because this Noble index goes in, say, for example, in East Antrim, Newton Abbey, the town Newton Abbey, that area there is as high as some parts of the countryside. So you'd have to figure all that out, to take the whole thing in.
I suppose that is the question: is what is rural isolation?
Yeah.
Because whilst we can measure deprivation and argue whether we're doing that right or not, it's the isolation bit that's unique too, and then what that means to the well-being of a person. Because whether you could be in a position where you want to be isolated, you want to be isolated.
That's exactly right.
But it's not doing your health any good.
Yeah.
And it could be it's a lot to do with choice too.
You go to the planners and rural and urban planners.
Yeah.
They'll end up coming down to a postcode. That's where they'll take that way out of it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work.
I understand. Michelle, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure I'm going to be very helpful with this, but I would imagine that it's actually going to be quite a difficult piece of work for us to carry out if we're going to be looking at an overview of the measurements, because this is something which the statisticians are going to be looking at, and certainly something which a number of the departments, including social development and education too, would be reviewing on quite a frequent basis. I'm not really sure even where we would start with that.
It would be a very highly, just to look at deprivation, you'd have to get into really technical, intricate detail and probably spend a lot of time talking to witnesses and commissioning a lot of research. And it would be a very technical exercise for us. I'm worried it'd be a bit dry.
Number crunching?
No, it would be. It would be, and I'm not quite sure that's where you would want to go with it. I think it needs to be looked at somewhere. I think there's something the Chair said there around what is commonly understood by rural isolation and why there's no defined definition, and maybe to take something like that and to explore it with some of the key groups to see whether the committee can come up with something better, something that could look at what is rural isolation. How is that defined and understood?
You see, the report did mention 2 areas, West Tyrone and the Glens. It's the 2 of the highest areas. Why?
I think in relation to those two areas, Oliver, those are predominantly relating to geography. I mean, the poverty was also, particularly in the west of the province, it wasn't even so much West Tyrone, rural and urban featured. I mean, I suppose a lot of these factors will exhibit in different ways, and it's equally said there isn't, I suppose, poverty in the east as well, but it's maybe more concentrated in west. It is a difficulty in the sense that how these circumstances will impact can depend on so many factors. Can depend on your age, the size of your family, your income. So I could live in a very isolated area, but I could earn so much that I'm able to have a helicopter, which varies me to, you know, and it's maybe as an extreme example, but it highlights the fact, I suppose, how multi-layered and complex this can be. It's not to say, however, that there still aren't communities where a lot of those factors come together to make it very hard not to be isolated, either in a geographical, an income, or even a societal basis. You could be in an area where you have very low income, you're remote from services, and you maybe as well are maybe facing an aging population, and that could be almost like a perfect storm almost in terms of some of the things we talked about here.
The Rural Development Council have done some good work on rural deprivation and how it's applied, and I was thinking rather than the committee maybe reinventing the wheel, that you could maybe speak to the Rural Development Council and subsequently to NISRA and see how that whole issue about measuring fits into a definition of rural isolation. Does that sound?
Yeah.
But also speak to other people about what their understanding of rural isolation is. I've heard about all the factors there. What's their understanding of rural isolation? What do they recommend should be in? You know, and you could maybe on top of that, looking at that, get some research maybe commissioned about what are the government departments, what are the government departments doing at the minute to address, you know, in the broad brush sense, what do they understand and what are they doing to address issues of rural isolation and economic and social isolation. Is that sort of what you're thinking about? If I took that away and wrote that up and brought it back, do you think you could finesse it then if you see something?
Get something down on paper in terms of reference, and then we can keep it for next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me, if I can remember what I said. Definition: rural isolation.
I think that there's basics. I think there's a couple of fundamental basics that you have to sort of address before you move anywhere, because it just would be pointless.
So the reason I picked the geographical one was that's the most readily accepted, and I suppose it's deprivation in terms of access to or proximity to service to being is the most obvious one that you can relate to isolation. But when I actually began to look at it, I began to realise, well, it's not just about physical geography here. There's so many other factors contribute to being isolated. Not all of which, it has to be said, to government can have an impact upon.
That's right.
And if Dart are having a hard time dealing with it, I don't think. You know,
the rural networks there, how do they define rural and urban?
I think they would be a good group to speak to.
Witnesses,
definitely a good group to speak
they talk
to.
about this all the time.
You could talk about, quite right.
Yeah.
The
We
likes of
could
those
definitely hold some of the evidence sessions out in a rural setting, maybe in the Rural Development Council building or
RCM would have very strong views on this as well.
RCM.
They're administrating large budgets, so therefore there have to be a criteria for it.
Right, okay. I'll bring something back and we can play back with it then when you see it, yeah.
Okay. Moving on then, there is also a tabled paper,
Page 24.
page 24, on a stakeholder event which Mark attended on the 11th of June, which was an event organised by DETI on the review of agri-food marketing and promotion. This is also referred to in the correspondence at pages 152 to 153 from the ETI committee. Mark, is there anything you want to add to this just before?
Yes, the briefing notes. I suppose what was interesting, I suppose, just in relation to that was that it was the start of a process. Really, I suppose, interesting where ETI are taking the lead, really in relation to the creation, I suppose, of a revised mechanism to market and promote our agri-food industry. As you can see there, the event had 25 people at it. Now, we were in a very big room. I don't know whether there was fewer than they expected, whether there's more than they expected, but it was effectively just the start of the process. It'll run there until the end of August. I don't want to, suppose, dwell on some of the themes on it. I suppose one of the central ones which they were asking opinion on was this concept almost of having a single marketing and promoting organisation, because at the minute the responsibility split across numerous. I mean, DARD were there and spoke, obviously, said in terms of the work that they do. You can see in the briefing note, Invest Northern Ireland were there too in terms of the function they perform. The only thing I would say, maybe in relation to some of the stakeholders who were there, I think it's a fair comment to say that maybe some appeared to maybe need convincing that what was being talked about would actually be of to benefit to them. It wasn't to say that many people were critical of what was currently on offer. Some were maybe just questioning whether what was being talked about would be actually an enhancement on what was already there. But there were equally, I suppose, and particularly Tony O'Neill, in his position of the chair of the Agri-Food Strategy Board, was very clear that in his opinion the need for a single marketing promotion body was clear to him, and he thought that the actual benefits that come from that were significant. I suppose some of the ratios for investment you can see in there as well. I mean, the Invest Northern Ireland was interesting in the sense that they mentioned the return of investment of 33 to 1. And I suppose Tony O'Neill did emphasise the point, well, look, if the return on investment is so high, we need to invest significantly more, because that Invest Northern Ireland team at the minute is operating on a budget of 1.5 million per year. Which is not, I suppose, as the point was made by a number of stakeholders, a big amount.
Yeah.
But I suppose the questions from the floor and comments did tend to maybe drive us down the lane. A lot of people were keen on the idea of the Board BA model from down south. And I suppose in terms of ramping up investment, ramping up exposure, and effectively trying to access markets through that increased investment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any comments or questions for Mark on that paper? Okay, happy enough then to move on. Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, well, now that work might well be of use to us. That paper that Mark has done there might well be of use to us in September. When we start an evidence session on the work being done and going for growth, which is always there on the horizon, members. So if I can ask members to note that. Agenda item number 7 then is correspondence. Can I refer members to correspondence at page 152 to 191. Are members content to action correspondence as suggested and the index sheet at 151? 2 items. Okay, members content? Okay. Agenda item number 8 then is forward work programme. Can I refer members to the forward work programme at pages 193 to 196? Can I seek agreement for the forward work programme as it sits? Okay. Agenda item number 9 is any other business? There's no other business. Then agenda item number 10, which is date of next meeting, which will be Tuesday 24th of June 2014 at 1:30 p.m. in room 30 Parliament Buildings. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you.
With regards to these